the years, business dynamics has changed. The way business operate has changed significantly. Guys, I am the commerce specialist. Welcome to my YouTube channel where you'll find videos covering various academic qualifications and professional certifications, including life-changing business ideas and techniques. So today's focus is on ABC. Not ABC what you learned in school. This is activity-based costing. If you look at the cost structure of a business 3 to 4 decades back, it was like this. If this is the total cost structure of a business, I'm talking about decades back, major component of their cost was material and labor. And let's say 20 or 10% was overheads. Why major component was material and labor? Because olden days, most of the businesses were involved in primary activity, mining, forestry, oil and gas, exploration, stuff like that. But these days, if you look at most of the Gulf countries, they have started looking at alternate sources of revenues, not just depending on oil and gas reserves. So if you look at the change, earlier people were more into primary activities as raw material got scarce. And we know that we don't have unlimited raw materials, unlimited deposit of crude oil, unlimited deposit of gold, silver, iron ore, other minerals. So yes, we have a limited supply. So people started towards manufacturing. And obviously when you're talking about manufacturing, it was secondary activity, you know. Manufacturing is secondary activity. But what to manufacture, how much to manufacture? For manufacturing, again, you need raw material, which is scarce in supply. So these days, as we speak, 2021, most of the businesses are focused toward tertiary activities. Tertiary activities means services, selling. If you're selling goods, you are into tertiary activity. If you're providing a service like telecommunication, banking, insurance, transportation, you name it, these are all tertiary activities. Firm of chartered accountants, doctors, lawyers, engineers, hospitals, these are all into tertiary activities. So if you look at the cost structure of business as we speak, most of the businesses, their cost structure would be like this now. So you look at the paradigm shift here. Earlier, the cost structure composed of material and labor were the major cost. Now, because of automation, shift toward tertiary activities, the focus is more on overheads rather than material and labor. Why? Because there's hardly any material cost. Manual labor and their jobs have been taken over by machines. And machines work through energy, electricity. Electricity, that's an overhead. If a business has too much of overheads, how to account for that? Gone are the days when businesses have a single activities. Single activity means, let's say you're just manufacturing. So maybe purchasing could be one of your activity. Manufacturing is one activity, that's it. But these days, if you look at service businesses like DHL, one of the courier services, if you look at their activity, they have diversified activities like receiving parcel from the customers, packing it, weighing it, sorting it, dispatching it, scheduling it, tracking it, customer service. There are so many. And all these activities have a cost attached to it. So what we are looking at is first identify the activity. What are the cost driving activities of a business? And obviously the later stage would be, do we need that activity or not? Can we eliminate that? But at the moment we are looking at how to account for these activities. So I have framed a question here on similar lines. So let's discuss a question and see how activity-based costing is done. So guys, here in the question, there's a lot of detail given. We're going to take them one by one. It says the company absorbs overhead on the basis of machine hours and the budgeted machine hours are 80,000. Please remember, overhead can be absorbed in different ways, but the most common for examination purposes is machine hours or labor hours. Alternatively, it could be odd number of units, labor cost and material cost as well. So what you need to focus in the question when it comes to activity-based costing, how overheads are absorbed. Here it clearly says it's absorbed on the basis of machine hours. Data is given for the company. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 activities, which is material handling, setup cost, machining cost, quality control, and delivery. These are different activities the company does. These are the cost drivers. Cost drivers are activities because of which you incur cost. The more cost driving activity, the more cost for the company. So cost driving activities are given here, like material handling is on the number of parts you handle, and there are 2 million parts you have handled, incurring a total cost of 400,000. Setup cost, the number of setups done is 3,000, it costs you 90,000, so on and so forth. Other details are also given. Expected sales 1 million units, batch size is given 3,000, setups 20 per batch, number of parts in one finished unit 3, machine hours required to make one batch is 60, delivery, each time you deliver 500 units, material cost and labor cost is given to you. Now, step by step analysis. Most of the time when you get an activity based costing question, you are asked to compare. Compare what? Cost per unit under traditional costing, cost per unit under activity based costing. Traditional costing is also known as absorption costing. You call it full costing, absorption costing, or traditional costing, means the same. So here what we are looking at is we intend to calculate cost per unit using traditional costing, which is absorption costing, and activity based costing. So let's begin with traditional costing, which is very simple, piece of cake. Cost per unit using absorption costing, which is traditional costing. The very first thing we need to do is we have to calculate overhead absorption rate. Overhead absorption rate is also known as overhead application rate. The formula is very simple. Overhead absorption rate is equal to budgeted overheads divided by budgeted, in this case it's machine hours. So budgeted, I am writing MH with machine hours. So budgeted overheads are these, total 720,000. Divide by budgeted machine hours is 80,000 machine hours. So as a result, you get 720,000 divide by 80,000. You get $9 per machine hour. This is the very first step when you calculate cost per unit using traditional costing, which is absorption costing. We calculated overhead application rate or overhead absorption rate, which is $9 per hour per machine hour. Next, what to do? We know our basic cost, the main cost. Direct material cost, direct labor cost, and overheads. We are lucky that direct material cost is given directly in the question, so I'm just copy pasting that. Direct material cost is $5.5. Direct labor cost as given in the question is $2.5. When I come to overhead, it says $9 per machine hours. So how many machine hours are required? 60 machine hours. So into 60. So 9 into 60, if I do it, this gives me $540, and this is for one batch. So my overhead cost is $540 for one batch. I don't need cost per batch, I need cost per unit. So you look at the batch size here. How many units are there in one batch? 3,000 units. So I'm going to divide it by 3,000 units. So I will get overhead cost per one unit. So how much is that? 540 divided by 3,000 gives me 0.18. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. This is my cost per unit. $8.18. Cost per unit using traditional costing, absorption costing is done. First step, calculate overhead absorption rate. Budgeted overheads divided by machine hours, labor hours, whatever is given in the question. Then you calculate cost per unit using your material, labor, and overhead cost. Next step, As per question, it says calculate cost per unit using activity-based costing. Now, for using activity-based costing, we need to do series of working. Let's have a look. So the very first activity we look at is material handling here. In the question, the budgeted cost is 400,000 and the budgeted activity is 200,000 part. So I'm writing the first activity here, material handling. $400,000 divided by 200,000. So it is, let me do it here, 400,000 divided by 200,000 parts. So obviously it will give me $2 per part handled. Okay, 400 divided by 2,000. Now, how many parts it requires for 1 unit? It says number of finished parts for 1 unit. In order to handle 1 part, the cost is $2 and we have 3 parts in 1 finished unit. So I am going to multiply it by $3, 3 parts. So this gives me $6 material handling cost per 1 finished unit. My next activity is setup cost. The cost is 90,000 and there are 3,000 setups. So I'm writing here setup cost. The cost is $90,000 and you divide by 3,000 setups. So this gives you 30 per setup. This is $30 is the cost of 1 setup. How many setups per batch? If you look at here, it says 20 setups per batch. So 30 multiplied by 20, this will give me setup cost for 1 batch, which will be, if I do it here, which will be $600. $600 is a setup cost for 1 batch. I don't need cost of batch, I need cost per unit. So again, look at the batch size, 3,000 units. So 600 I divide by 3,000 units. This will give me setup cost per unit. So 600 divided by 3,000, that gives me 0.2. $0.2 is setup cost for 1 unit. Next, my activity is machining cost. The cost is 800,000 and there are 80,000 machine hours. So I'm writing here machining cost. The cost is 800,000 divided by 80,000. So that will give me $10 per hour, $10 per machine hour. How many machine hours are required? If you look at here, it says machine hours required per batch is 60. So 10 multiplied by 60 will again give me $600. And this is machining cost for a batch. And the batch size we all know is 3,000. So if I divide it by 3,000 units, again I'll get the same amount coincidentally. This is machining cost per unit. My next cost here is quality control. The cost is 100,000. 1,000 units of batches we have looked at. So quality control, the cost is 100,000. And how many batches we have done the quality control for? 1,000. So that gives me $100 per batch. I don't need per batch. I need to divide it by the batch size to get it for units. 100 divided by 3,000 divided by 3,000 will give me 0.03 per unit. Okay. After quality control, I have delivery cost, which is another activity. 50,000 is the cost and 2,000 deliveries we have done. So I'm running short of space. I'm coming here. Delivery cost, which is 50,000 divided by number of deliveries, 2,000. So when you divide 50,000 by 2,000, you get delivery cost of 25 is the delivery cost. Now, this is for each delivery. In each delivery, how many units are we delivering? 500 units. So if I divide it by 500 units, I get delivery cost per unit. So 25 divided by 500 gives me 0.05 delivery cost per unit. So if you look at all these overheads, these are all your overheads because of various activities. So if you add these all, 0.5 plus 0.03 plus 0.2 plus 0.2 plus 6. These are your overheads, 6.48. This is just your overhead cost per unit. And then from the question, if I copy paste material and labor, if I add material cost and labor cost, which is 5.5 and 2.5, if you add them, 6.48 plus 8 gives you 14.48 as cost per unit. Guys, we need to be very careful now. When we use absorption costing, the cost per unit is coming to $8. Whereas when we use activity-based costing, the cost per unit is coming $14. It's not always that activity-based costing will give you a higher cost per unit and absorption costing will give you a lower cost per unit. What is important is activity-based costing is more detailed. It is recommended when a business has numerous activities because of which the overhead cost goes up. It's better to use activity-based costing to calculate cost per unit rather than traditional absorption costing. Now, I have heard many times when I used to work as a consultant, customers coming to me and telling me, oh, I don't know what happened, but my business was running well, but all of a sudden, things went wrong and I had to, shut down. I have to, wind up the business. Most of the time, they are unable to calculate the cost per unit. What if the business has many operations, but using the same data, I calculated cost per unit here, 8.18. Because overheads I've taken as a blanket rate here. I never looked into the details. So my cost per unit is coming $8. What if the business calculates their cost per unit as $8 and add $2 profit to it? And they sell the units for $10. And they sell 10 million units. So 10 million into 2 is 20 million profit. So business would be thinking that we are making, let's suppose cost is $8. If they add $2 profit, their selling price would be $10. So business is living in a fool's paradise. Why? Because they think each unit they sell, they make a profit of 2. And what if they sell 10 million units? 10 million into 2 is 20 million. The business thinks they have made a profit of 20 million. And accordingly, they start spending. The reality is the cost is just $14. How can you sell it for $10? And if you're doing that, around $4.4, you are losing on each unit. And if you have sold 10 million units, 10 million into 4.4, around 40 million, you made a loss. So if you mess up in the costing and pricing, you will have to pay through your nose. So ladies and gentlemen, in a nutshell, first you calculate cost per unit using absorption costing. The step is you calculate overhead cost per unit, overhead application rate. Then calculate cost per unit using material, labor and overhead. The concept of ABC is more mathematical rather than accounting. Accounting concepts are less here. Mathematics and calculation, plus, minus, division, multiplication is there. The idea is you look at an activity, material handling. The cost was 400,000. From 400,000, we have to convert it to cost per unit. Likewise, if you look at setup cost, the cost was 90,000. From 90,000 setup cost and activity cost, I have to convert it to cost per unit. How much it comes to cost per unit? If you look at quality control cost, the cost is 100,000. That's an overhead. I need to calculate how much is quality control cost for 1 unit, which comes to 0.03. The same I have done for all the cost drivers, which is the overheads, material handling, setup, machining, quality control and delivery. Once it's done, I add all the overheads. These are all my overheads. Then material and labor, I get cost per unit. Guys, I hope you have understood this topic. If you have any queries, questions relating to this, please write a comment in the comment section. I will respond to you as usual. If you like this video, please share it with your dear and near ones so that others can also benefit. Thank you so very much for your precious time.